Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. We have breaking news. I'll wait for a couple of other people to come up in here. Breaking news. Happy Wednesday to everybody. Breaking news. Didn't look good for Keefe D today in court. Michael Brown was good. Kareem Smith was good. Las Vegas in the building. What's happening? Bruno 67, Doug Mack, Andrew KK. Ladies and gentlemen, breaking news. Didn't look good for Keefe D in court today. Cleve Bryant, Jim D, Kev V, Fatima, what's good? Always a pleasure to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna get right into it. Today in Las Vegas, a jury, not a judge, a jury found Keefe, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, should I say. A Nevada jury today found the man suspected of the 1996 murder of Tupac Shakur guilty of charges stemming from a jailhouse fight with another inmate. It doesn't look good for Keefe D. I'm going to tell you why this doesn't really look good. I don't know how much the jury has been tainted by what the media has portrayed, or if the people who knew they were going to be serving on the jury had an opportunity to go out and watch certain videos dealing with Keefe D, be it on the Art of Dialogue, Vlad, or what have you, right? But today, a jury in Las Vegas found the man suspected of the 1996 murder of rapper Tupac Shakur guilty of charges stemming from a jailhouse fight with another inmate. Now, Keefe D. Dwayne Davis, he pleaded not guilty to battery by a prisoner and challenged him to a fight, a felony and gross misdemeanor, respectively. So this really doesn't look good because Keefe D is awaiting murder charges to go to trial on murder charges involving Tupac Shakur. And then while he's in jail, Keefe D, from what it looks like, was defending himself, just to be on the fair side of what that is. But I don't think the prison officials and the people in jail see that as what he might have been doing. And so Keefe D pleaded not guilty to the charges, right? But today was found guilty charges that carry combined prison terms of 2 to 12 years. Now think about that. So now for this charge right here, a felony and gross misdemeanor, respectively, Keefe D could be facing anywhere from 2 to 12 years. And so even if he's not convicted, hypothetically, I'm just saying hypothetically, like I said, I don't know the outcome, just like I didn't know the outcome to this situation. Even if he's not convicted, let's say, for argument's sake, not convicted in the Tupac situation, he can face up to 2 to 12 years for this felony assault and gross misdemeanor that he was found guilty of today in Las Vegas, right? Keefe D is set to be sentenced on May 27th. So he hasn't been sentenced. He was found guilty today, but he's going to be sentenced on May 27th over the course of a one-day trial. So the trial only lasted one day. Wow. And then when you look at Keefe D's past history, and being I would say a career felon, You know what I mean? He's been to prison numerous amounts of times. This it just doesn't sit well. It doesn't bode well for the optics of it, because it's like, and not that it has anything to do with the truthful nature of it, but they look at it from one perspective. They say, well, he's in jail, he's waiting trial on a murder charge and dealing with Tupac Shakur. All of the things that he said, right? If the jury bothered to look up and knew they were serving on this, and they went online and they said, well, let me go see, like, who is this guy and whatever, right? So today, him being convicted of that, facing anywhere from 2 to 12 years, knowing that he was, somebody who suspected of being involved with the murder of Tupac Shakur. It just doesn't look good. No way does this look good. You know what I mean? No way does this look good for him from that perspective. They say over the course of the one-day trial, both sides were careful not to bring up the murder charge that landed Davis in jail. But I mean, come on. It's a high-profile murder case involving Tupac Shakur, right? That landed him in jail in the first place. As all members of the jury stated, they were not aware of Davis or his more high-profile charge in the Shakur killing. Okay, if they want to say so, it's all good. Like I said, Davis asserts that his involvement in the December 23rd, 2024 fight was merely self-defense. Like I said earlier, that's what it appeared to be. He said the aggressor, his attorney argues, was Rochlon Hamilton, a man held 2 cells down from Davis. They said surveillance footage, and I'm sure most of you guys probably seen the surveillance footage, capturing the fight shows Hamilton waiting by a sink in a common area within the jail. A corrections officer had brought him in and left Hamilton to wait for him to return with a razor so the inmate could shave. Meanwhile, Davis was passing through the room with a corrections officer when returning from a visit with his attorney, Carl Arnold. Arnold argues that Hamilton clocked this and tucked himself behind a pole and out of the view until Davis and the correction officer escorting him entered the room. So they're basically saying that the guy Hamilton was the aggressor. He kind of waited for Keefe D to, he knew Keefe D was going to be coming through the area, so he kind of tucked himself away to wait for Keefe D to start the fight. Basically said, his lawyer said he's laying in wait at this point, Arnold said during the opening arguments, because he knows what his intentions are. His intentions are to attack my client, right? The video shows the two detention center inmates squaring off before coming out to blows. Prison officials testified that it was preceded by an exchange of words. And the funny part about it is, I guess they got microphones in the jail recording conversations. And the whole thing started from, what's up? Like, what's up? Like, what's up? What you want to do, right? Or whatever, right? A question, the state argues, carries a much different implication in prison. I guess they would have that, right? What's up? The prosecution said is not a term of endearment. It's enticing each other into going into further confrontation, testified Patrick Gray, a corrections officer at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Detention Police Department and lead investigator of the fight. The state argues that Davis played as much of a role in the instigating the fight as Hamilton, and points to a taped phone calls in which it says Davis bragged about the altercation, saying, "I get dirty, dude. Dog handles his business." See, once again, Keefe D talking on the phone again, and they recording his conversations, man. Did y'all hear that? I'm gonna say the state argues that Davis played as much of a role in instigating the fight as Hamilton, and points out to tape phone calls in which Keefe D is on the phone and he bragged about the altercation, saying, "I get dirty, dude, and dog handles his business." Amazing. See, once again, and I'm sure they played this in court, Keefe D cannot keep his mouth shut to save his soul. Once again, it shows that, number one, that it's one thing, and see that right there, that statement right there I mean, is enough to give a jury to say, hey, man, even if they pretending like they didn't know anything about the Tupac situation, if they live in Las Vegas, come on. You know what I mean? It's on the Las Vegas news. They know who the guy is. You know what I mean? They would have to be in Mars somewhere to not know who Keefe D is. It's probably damn near on the news every time something happens, if you will, right? And so they hear this phone conversation that they taped when Keefe D was on the phone, and he's saying, "I get dirty, dude," and dog handles his business. It's just not a good look. It's not a good look. Keefe D's lawyer pressed the correctional officers about the nature of the inmates run-in with one another, questioning whether it was against policy for an inmate to be left alone in the common area. The officers admitted it was an unusual circumstance, right? So it's kind of like, sometimes guards in jail, they do that. They'll set up a fight. You know what I mean? They be like, "Oh, you bring him out," and they go talk, and you bring him out, and then I bring him out, and we act like we don't know what happened. You know what I mean? I don't know what the relationship. Oh, and Keefe D's relationship with the guards hasn't been such a positive one, so that's not far fetched. But like I said, despite that being what that is, you know what I mean? Keefe D was found guilty today of the assault, and he's facing anywhere from 2 to 12 years. So man, wow. And so, but the officers basically admitted that it was unusual that two inmates would be left open in the open area like that, right? In the closing arguments, the state urged the jury not to focus on whether the jail should have ensured the two men were kept away from one another, but rather whether the behavior met the conditions of the charge, right? True. You know what I mean? It's not the circumstances that put you there. It's your actions. You know what I mean? Maybe if Keefe D would have held up his hands, be like, "Man, hey, look, man, I'm not trying to." And then once again, the appearance of that would have also lent credibility to Keefe D, saying, "Well, damn, he might not be a violent guy, right?" But him being on the phone talking about, "I get dirty, dude," you know what I mean, does not bode well. And then now this is being promoted and advertised in the public in regards to him being found guilty of another jailhouse assault, if you will, because people don't really read articles. They look at headlines and then they move from there, and they understand it from there, right? So in the closing arguments, right, they say, why are all those procedures in place in the first place? Because people like Hamilton and Davis are going to get into a brawl. Clark County Chief Deputy District Attorney Mark Giacomo said finding Davis innocent of the charges would hold people in jail to a different standard and send a message that violence is permitted, he said. Further, now Mark Giacomo is the same prosecutor that's in on the Tupac murder trial. This is a whole different judge. So the deputy district attorney is the same district attorney that's the district attorney involved in the murder trial, right? And said further, the argument that Davis was merely defending himself fails, Giacomo said. Neither one is entitled to self-defense. Giacomo said, however, he argued that if anyone was, it would be Hamilton because Davis can be seen on camera approaching the man, right? Once again, you know what I mean? Hey, man, whatever, and letting him be the aggressor. And then, in the appearance of defending yourself, it might have been a different situation. Mine is talking on the phone talking about, "I get dirty, dude." You know what I mean? Dog handles his business, really doesn't help him out either. Carl Arnold painted a different picture, one where Hamilton was the instigator and Davis acted in response to what he felt was an imminent danger. You know what I mean? It could be taken both ways. Like I said, whichever way you want to take it. The state cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt that my client did not act in self-defense, Arnold said. He likened the situation to a schoolyard scuffle and urged the jury to carefully review the surveillance footage to look for Hamilton making the first move against Davis. There has to be someone who threw the punch first. And that's what we have from Mr. Hamilton, Arnold said. Now, to be fair, Carl Arnold is Keefe D's lawyer in this case, right? And he's also Keefe D's lawyer in the Tupac murder case. If he can't beat a simple assault on tape, a jailhouse assault case, I don't see how he gonna win this Tupac murder case, man. It looks crazy. Like I said, just based on the information that we have in regards to what Keefe D said. Because see, once again, as you see in this same case, it's not even what the jury's seen because they got a tape. Listen, y'all, they got a tape where they could see the whole incident transpire, right? And they still found Keefe D guilty. You understand what I'm saying? So in the Tupac situation, all they got is basically Keefe D's many confessions involving and admitting he was involved in the murder of Tupac Shakur, which now basically is gonna, the optics of it, it really just doesn't look good, man. Um, so like I said, they said where the state argued that the men were engaged in mutual combat, Keefe D's lawyer argued that there is no evidence to support that conclusion. The fact that Hamilton and Davis continued to grapple on the ground while a corrections officer pepper sprayed them and attempted to pry them apart doesn't take away Davis's claim of self-defense. Here's the thing: self-defense goes to the person that believes they're in imminent danger. Kind of like when the police say they in imminent danger and they use their gun and say, "Well, I felt like I was in danger." You know what I mean? They get that benefit of the doubt. You as a prisoner in prison, evidently they strip you of that right? So basically, Keefe D's lawyer saying, here's the thing: self-defense goes to the person that believes they're in imminent danger. My client believed he was in imminent danger when he made that turn. Saw the guy in the corner that said, "What's up?" And he was coming at him. Both Hamilton and Davis were charged with battery and challenges to fight. Hamilton's trial for the same charges is set for October. The two were initially going to be heard together, but Clark County District Judge Nadia Kroll severed the cases over concerns that Davis' notoriety might prejudice the trial. During the trial, the state reassured the jury that it didn't have to choose which of the men was guilty of battery and asserted that both were charged with the same offense. So, both of them might be found guilty. The guy Hamilton might be found guilty. Keefe D was found guilty today. And but like I said, it just doesn't bode well. The guy Hamilton, he's also in prison for a murder charge. So he's in jail for murder. Keefe D's in jail for murder, and it doesn't look good for either of them. You know what I mean? At this particular time. So and say you don't have to determine who was more wrong. Both are wrong, Clark County Deputy District Attorney Parker Brooks said. The battery trial precedes Davis's more highly anticipated trial for his accused involvement of the 1996 murder of Tupac Shakur, in which he was charged with one count of murder with the use of a deadly weapon, right? Even though he wasn't the shooter. I try to tell people that in Las Vegas, they don't even play that. If you was in the car or you were with the person in commission of the felony or the crime, you basically get charged with that person got charged with that actually shot Tupac, in which Keefe D implicated that his nephew did it, right? Like I said, it's not like the thing that we do and go back and forth here on the internet and talk about. When you get in court, you know what I mean? It's evidence, it's arguments, and then it's what the jury thinks is relevant and true and who tells the best story, right? So we know Keefe D's pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, claiming in a memoir that he was in the car with his nephew Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, and that it was Anderson who shot and killed Shakur at the intersection near Las Vegas Strip. Anderson denied involvement in the death of Shakur and was killed in 1998 in a shooting in Compton, California. As most people know, authorities believe Shakur murder stemmed from a competition between East Coast members of the Bloods and West Coast group called the Crips. Davis was part of the latter group that competed for dominance in the gangster rap genre. Davis' jury trial for murder is set for February 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, tell me, what do you think about this? This is crazy. It's like, damn, man, you want to keep your nose clean, man. You want at least the appearance that you a good person, or that you trying to, that you've learned something. You know what I mean? I don't understand. People, they in jail and you still, like I said, and it's when you got to defend yourself. You know what I mean? But you know, um, to each is their own, man. To each is their own. But yeah, today Keefe D was found guilty of um of a felony. So that's a whole nother felony, right? Right? And gross misdemeanor, respectively. So he was convicted of two things: a felony and a gross misdemeanor. And so, where does he go from here? And the sentencing is on May 27th, and he faces anywhere from 2 to 12 years for this. You know what I mean? Does it really matter, whether he gets 2 or gets 12 years, or he gets a suspended sentence, or he gets whatever? It really doesn't matter, because the optics of this, the optics of it alone. And of course, the people in the jury said that they didn't know who Keefe D was. That's a lie. I don't believe that. Like I said, if you live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and you watch the evening news on 2, 4, 5, 11, 13, any of those channels in Las Vegas, if you watch the news, you heard of Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, and him being locked up for the murder of Tupac Shakur, right? So, like I said, some people might not know, but if you tell me 2 out of 12, 3 out of 12, as far as the jury is concerned, that they don't know that, then I just can't believe that. I mean, it's up for the believer to believe that, but I just can't believe it. So, but yeah, man, just not too long ago, Keefe D was found guilty, facing 2 to 12 years for felony and gross misdemeanor, respectively. And the judge basically said, hey, you know what? You don't even have to find who was wrong or who was right. You know what I mean? They both were charged with the same thing, and both of them are in jail for murder. And yeah, this is where we at. Will you save money out? Yeah, like I said, how smart can we be? The rat think he got away with the fake story. He has to go through the same thing. Yeah, like I said, when you think about you think about the Keefe D situation, and you think about the Reggie situation, right? Reggie the rat. The cold part about that is I was watching Choke No Joke video he did, and like I said, there was so many other lies that even in the grand jury testimony in regards to Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., like things he couldn't even possibly testify to. There was never one question that the district attorney asked Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. when he went and testified and before the grand jury involved in the Keefe D situation, that he didn't say that he couldn't answer or he didn't have knowledge about. I found that to be very, like, for somebody who wasn't there at the scene of the crime, right? Everything that the district attorney lawyer asked him in front of the grand jury, or members of the grand jury asked him, right? He had a response for. And for somebody who wasn't there, that's simply not possible. But for Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., it was possible. You know what I mean? So he even lied again about the Soul Train Music Awards in the grand jury testimony, basically saying that when Tupac and Biggie ran into each other, that was about gang warfare and not about Tupac actually seeing Biggie for the first time since he had been out of prison. Right? And so, once again, when you deal with all of these things, like I said, once again, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. had testified way before that on YouTube that it was Keefe D that had the gun. You know what I mean? And it was Keefe D that ran away and hid underneath a car allegedly. And Tupac told Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., shoot him, Reggie, shoot him. It didn't happen. Now, listen to me. Now, in the grand jury testimony, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said something totally different. So that's 4 different stories, ladies and gentlemen. 4 different stories about one incident. First it was Keefe D. Then it was Biggie that Tupac allegedly told Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. to shoot him. Then it was Biggie's homeboy C. Gutter, right? And now, in the grand jury testimony, it was allegedly over some kind of war between gang factions from that perspective. And that simply wasn't what it was about, ladies and gentlemen. It was about Tupac seeing Biggie for the first time at the Soul Train Music Awards, and Tupac reacting and getting all wild like he could do. You know what I mean? Talking crazy. And that's what it was basically about. So Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. cannot be trusted. You can't believe nothing he says. As you see, I showed you the video earlier today in where they basically filed a privacy complaint against my channel based on the fact that I actually informed you guys about Gullible John's and Bum's first bankruptcy, right? Which under the law, like I said, I'm gonna do my due diligence before I make a move like that. Under the law, I did nothing wrong. It's just as simple as that. But once again, the hypocrisy that involves Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. when he can't win with the lies, right? He'll turn right back around and resort back to the old conniving police tactics and the underhanded tactics that he can do best, in which, once again, in filing a fake complaint against my channel for privacy violations, is once again another what? It's another lie. So that goes to show you how effective they really were over at Bums First. They weren't. They were telling a bunch of stories. They were telling a bunch of lies. And once called out on those lies, they have nowhere else to run. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, when Discretion TV reported on the fact that they had he called Morgan to Morgan and told Morgan to Morgan that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. had been implicated as being the orchestrator, mastermind in the murder of Tupac Shakur, the law firm, national law firm, Morgan and Morgan, Discretion TV basically said that, hey, you know what? They had got canceled for that. Morgan and Morgan would no longer be doing any kind of advertising. Ladies and gentlemen, I question you as to the last two videos over on Bums First. Do you see any more Morgan and Morgan ads? No, you don't. No, you don't. So when I said that, I wasn't trying to say that, oh, I knew. Once again, you have people on YouTube who want you to be wrong for the sake of being wrong. No, I was just reporting what I had heard based on what I'd seen and witnessed from Discretion TV, right? So from that perspective, that was what it was. But I take now that it is true, because those ads are no longer being displayed on Bums First. Like I said, once again, in the bankruptcy in itself, Gullible John Highland, the bankruptcy in itself speaks volumes as to them making fun of people who had jobs at Walmart. Like, where do people do that now? Since when is a regular honest day living corny? You know what I mean? You got Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., who is a confirmed police informant, right? Who told on Suge Knight 3 days after Tupac had died. I did the video on that if you haven't seen that, right? He told on the guy who set him up to get money, to have a job, to have a career, to have a company, right? 3 days after Tupac died, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is talking to the LAPD, telling the LAPD Suge Knight is now hiring gang members as his security, blood gang members, and they're carrying guns. This is documented. You can go about three videos from this one right here. You know what I mean? On my regular videos tab, and you can see, and I put the information up and where that's being said, right? So, as you can see, with the Keefe D situation right now, Keefe D, like I said, Keefe D, in fact, is his own worst enemy in any situation, because even in this situation right here, after the fight in prison, Keefe D is on the phone. He's still on the phone talking, right? When he was trying to get out of bail, they had conversation from a visit that he was talking about some people who the guy was that was bailing him out and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? And you're just talking too much, right? In this situation here, The state had argued that Davis played as much of a role in instigating the fight as the guy Hamilton, and points to a tape phone calls. Listen, to tape phone calls in which Keefe D was bragging, like he was bragging about the situation involving Tupac. Same thing, man. Same thing. Like he was bragging about, yeah, we did this and we did that. And I gave my nephew this, and we were standing on the corner when the ambulance ran, came past us, and all of this, that, and the other, right? Keefe D is still on the phone, even after the fight. He was bragging about the altercation, saying, quote, "I get dirty, dude." And Dog handles his business. How can you win with that? You can't win with that. You can't receive a fair and just trial when you're actually on the phone talking about an assault that happened, and you basically saying, "Hey, I was protecting myself." You come off on the phone conversation like that, you come off as the aggressor. I gets dirty, dude. To lay people in the jury, if, like, say, if they're white, Mexican, whatever, black, whatever, right? To lay people, everyday working people, they like, oh, they got him on the phone conversation saying, "I get dirty, dude." You know what I mean? Dog handles his business. Oh, he's a dog. That's how he sees himself from that perspective, right? So when you understand that, it doesn't bode well for Keefe D. But like I said, once again, we're gonna see what this brings about. Keefe D gets sentenced on May 27th, and he's facing anywhere from 2 to 12 years. You know what I mean? And if the judge decides to say, "You know what, Mr. Davis, you're in here waiting trial for another charge, and here it is that you get involved in more of something else," right? And just they want to slam down the gauntlet on them. They can do that. You give these people jurisdiction over your life now that you in their system, and they can kind of determine what's going to happen with you. Then based on his prior record, like I say, they say your future look good, but your background killing you. You see what I'm saying? There's a saying that says that your future look good, but your background killing you. You see what I'm saying? So this is one of those situations that a person want to avoid at all costs. So yeah, man, it's crazy. Yeah, Steve Smith, you right about that. Like I said, he never learns, man, and it's kind of unfortunate. But we're gonna see what happens, man, on May 27th. It once again, May 27th, Keefe D is gonna make another headline. And the headline is gonna be I can tell you already what it's gonna be. Suspected Tupac murderer receives blank, blank, blank time for jailhouse assault, and if they want to put it in there, while awaiting trial on murder charges. You know what I mean? It's the press free to do what they want to do, especially if they're trying to sell newspapers and get clicks. You know what I mean? So yeah, like I said, once again, yeah, it's pretty unfortunate. But yeah, you know what? I wanted to say something else to you guys, right? In reference to talking about the Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and uh the Bums First bankruptcy, right? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a prime example of somebody having that karma that I always talk about. When I told you karma is undefeated, she's undefeated. Like I said, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and Gullible John over at Bums First have been out here just slandering people's name, uh, lying on people, telling blatant lies, uh, just defaming people. I mean, people they didn't even know. Like I said, Gullible John, John Highland never knew Tupac. He never met Tupac a day in his life. Gullible John was hired by Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. as an IT guy, or more so hired by Michelle A when Michelle A was running Death Row. You know what I mean? And so I guess when that fell apart and when that ceased to exist, they seemed to say, we could start a YouTube channel and name it after the first song on Tupac's Machiavelli album. and call it Bomb First, right? So that just goes to tell you how much creative juices went into actually thinking of the channel name. It really didn't. You know what I mean? They were lying and stealing from the beginning. You know what I mean? Take that Tupac name off of the first song off of Machiavelli. And so, so since the inception, when I first came on the YouTube, um, they were talking about me. I never said anything. I never even knew who Reggie really was. You know what I mean? He was a non-factor. Like Suge said in that video that I released yesterday, Reggie was simply security, and Tupac didn't fuck with him. He didn't. It's just as simple as that, y'all. Tupac did not fuck with Reggie. Tupac did not carry on conversations with Reggie as Reggie tried to make it appear to be for all of these years. Appearing to act like he knew what Tupac's business was. He really simply didn't know. As a matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was mad when me and the Art of Dialogue did the video about Tupac not being signed to Death Row, and when I presented the paperwork, which that whole story went viral because everybody thought that Tupac was actually signed to Death Row. You know what I mean? I know a little bit about the music business. I don't know everything, but I know enough to know that, when you sign a contract with somebody and you put out a record and you in jail and the record goes number one, meaning Me Against the World, right? When that went number one, I'm like, okay, he get out high, he on death row, was my thought. Then I did a little research and found the paperwork. I was like, okay, so this really, truly, honestly explains it. When we did that video and presented the paperwork, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. got mad because he thought he was, once again, as you see how he's been handling and trying to control the narrative around the conversation around the Tupac murder situation, going and lying to a grand jury. When he did all of those things, he was basically trying to control the narrative, if you will. But like I said, number one, he wasn't there for the situation in Vegas, but yet was the first person to go testify in front of the grand jury. So when me and Art of Dialogue did that video, he was mad. He was like, damn, who's this guy? You know what I mean? Because he never knew me. Like I said, from that perspective, I probably seen him around when I, was around Tupac back then, but I didn't really pay attention to him because he was a non-factor. Like I said, from that perspective, a lot of times when I seen Tupac, he didn't have no security. Or if he did, he probably had like one, but a lot of times he didn't have no security on him. And that's just sometimes how he rolled. And so, but at the end of the day, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. got mad. And so he tried to attack me in regards to, oh, is this guy? He's a clown. And they took my picture and put the clown wig and then tried to go behind and put information out on me, trying to discredit me, right? And talked about how, I ran Jay Mix off the internet. I'm gonna run you off and I'm gonna do this, that, and the other, and so on and so forth, by the lies and the insults that he would make, right? But everything comes full circle. Now we see now what happened. And like I said, I don't wish bad luck on nobody. I really, truly, honestly don't. But the bankruptcy speaks volumes. It speaks volumes because all of the people that Gullible John owes money to, he's now ducking out on that. You understand what I'm saying? So when one, files bankruptcy, especially chapter 7, chapter 11 and 13 are two different things. That's a reorganization. You're actually still paying your creditors as you reorganize when you do a chapter 11 or 13. You understand what I'm saying? But a chapter 7, you basically got to liquidate everything. And then from what your assets are, your creditors get paid from that. So it speaks volumes that Gullible John was making some kind of money, and then he wasn't still taking care of his business, so much so that he would owe the IRS also. You see what I'm saying? And so all of the degradation and disrespect and all of the name calling and all of those things about a lot of people that helped Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., like I said, it only comes full circle that this is what's happening at this particular time right now. And so that they would do what they did just the day before yesterday. I go to my email and I see this thing that says from YouTube, it says privacy notice complaint. I'm like, privacy notice complaint? What is this? Right? And it's from none other than Bomb First, the ecosphere of Bomb First, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., Gullible John Highland, right? Saying that I'm violating somebody's privacy by insinuating that me posting video clips from Michael Douglas Carlin's YouTube, because he put out the video, and he put out the paperwork that somehow I was in violation. But under the law, on the 9037, I put the video out earlier, 9037, I didn't violate any laws. I didn't put out any children's names, any social security numbers, any account numbers, or any of those things that would violate one's privacy, right? Sure, the bankruptcy, they have a law, and like I said, that is a federal law. The statute of B 9037, and you can look it up. It's like a privacy act. So like I said, once again, in Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and them doing that, they knew that what they were filing was fraudulent, was false, was a lie. And like I said, they don't have no problem telling lies and hoping that they can get away with it. They knew damn well I didn't invade nobody's privacy, because if that were the case, then they would have done it to 10 other people. But when they were doing it to the 10 other people and talking crazy and saying all of this, that, and the other, and putting up alleged paperwork and all of that, they didn't feel the same kind of way. So now that someone tells the truth and puts the actual documentation that you can go look up in the courthouse about them, now they want to run to the YouTube police. Oh, they violate my property. No, it wasn't. So I wanted you to understand what they did and what they've been doing, right? And this is all behind the scenes. So now, basically, those 1,700 videos that they did over on Bums First are basically now for sale. You know what I mean? And one can actually go bid on that, right? And on the channel itself, because it was under John Hyland's name and not under a corporate name, right? That would have been exempt from the personal bankruptcy of John Hyland. You understand what I'm saying? So like I said, once again, this is what's going on, and this is why Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and Gullible John have no competence, if you will. They lack competence, and they lack character as far as men just being men, right? And their credibility is zero. I told you guys that a long time ago, and like I said, I talked about the Morgan and Morgan ads. Look at the last couple of videos over on Bums First. Those Morgan and Morgan ads are gone. So even some of the advertisers, right, have basically ducked their head and say, hey, you know what? I really don't want nothing to do with none of this. You know what I'm saying? Y'all here slandering people's names, people that have relationships with certain people. And then when it comes time to, somebody to say something truthful about you, the first thing they want to do is yell foul. No, he violated my privacy. What? Like I told you, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. filed a lawsuit against me. He know the lawsuit was frivolous, but this is what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. does. And what he thought was, I'm gonna say it again, is that I wouldn't respond to the lawsuit. He thought that I'm like, man, look, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm like what Denzel Washington say in Training Day. He say, I'm surgical with this bitch, man. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to this law. You know what I mean? OG told me one time, he said, man, you can bend it, but don't break it. And if you're going to do something, you better know about what you're doing, right? So that you don't fall victim to the system. You see what I'm saying? And what Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. has been doing is basically playing both sides of the fence, using the law against people, right? And making crazy accusations. And 1 minute he out here, he talking, like he's a gangster 1 minute, and then the next minute he's talking about like he's still pro or working with law enforcement still. When the fact of the matter is Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is a convicted felon, former police officer, convicted felon, convicted of money laundering, drug dealing, all of that. But he's out here perpetrating a fraud and then lying to YouTube and trying to get people's a channel striked or whatever you want to call it. They did that too. It didn't work. You know what I mean? And so I just need you guys to understand and know what's really going on and hearing it from me live versus, when I put out a video and I'm, sometimes I'm putting the actual articles and the paperwork with it so you can understand what I'm talking about and follow along with what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So I needed you to hear that from me, from me live, along with this situation involving Keefe D being found guilty of assault and facing 2 to 12 years. So once again, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys. What were we talking about in the chat? Yeah, absolutely. Already got it. Like I said, once again, and most people who know that, like I said, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. got his father hemmed up in some kind of in that craziness, man. So it just goes to show his character and who he really is as an individual, and it doesn't bode well. You know what I mean? You know, like I said, Vlad. I got nothing but a respect for my fellow YouTubers. Vlad, I would recommend that you ask him real questions when he comes over there. You know, on your channel, just the real questions. I mean, you might find something that would be worthy of doing more numbers when he's on there. Other than when other people come on there and join him. I seen the numbers pick up. When Wack came over there and joined him a little bit. The numbers went up. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. on his own can't do numbers. It's just not happening no more. You know what I mean? Once again, so let that be known at the end of the day, because the algorithm is a learning algorithm, and the algorithm has learned that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is a liar. Right? The algorithm has learned that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. lied to the grand jury. The algorithm has learned that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. has lied about so many things, because once it's talked about and conversated in, all of this data is being collected. Just like the situation with Suge Knight, I was telling you, dude, 3 days after Tupac died, man, Reggie was talking to the police, man, snitching on Suge. For what reason? And that's the thing that's one of them questions that you would want to know. Like, yo, here is the documentation. Here is Officer Ajita and Officer Yamamoto basically saying that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. said that Suge Knight is now hiring gang members as his security, and they're carrying guns. What would possess Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. to do that 3 days after Tupac passed? Nobody's ever asked that question. Nobody's ever asked that question. And so once again, it just all makes me wonder, what's really going on. You know what I mean? And how this is really going down. Today, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. did a live, and he put out, and I don't know what this is about, but it just seemed peculiar to me. Now he was calling Loose Cannon his, my boy Loose. Stop it, man. Stop it. Stop it. I don't think he ever met Loose Cannon a day in his life. My boy Loose, But then he turned around and used Loose Cannon's video when Loose Cannon's girlfriend, Sharice, when she was over there filming, feeling some kind of way, emotionally about her man being in the house and the house getting raided. She recording that on the thing, and Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and Gullible John take that video and put a title on it, that Reggie Wright house being raided in regards to the Tupac murder. Yeah, they did that, man. They did that. She recording from outside, the FBI raiding her house, their place in Vegas, and Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. and them would hijack that video and put on it that this is Reggie's house being raided in relation to the Tupac murder, so that they can get clicks and views. And now, today as we know it, the information that Bomb First is now bankrupt. Amazing. You see what I mean? So you can see where the karma comes from. The lies, the malfeasance, the slander, the fake friends. Now somebody that he never met, my boy, hope they don't get mad at me. But they put out a video today of all of Loose Cannon talking on a No Jumper. Oh yeah, let me, put it out there. This is all the stuff that he said. Like as if it ain't out there already, as if we need to hear it from Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. He might was asked to do that by somebody. Hey Reggie, why don't you go and do a video of all of the things? If you and John could go and do a video of all of those things and kind of help out the case. You see what I'm saying? because that's what he do. You feel me? You know, just like when Keefy D was out, he was calling Keefy D up, trying to get him on the phone, talking, yeah, you know, I got Keefy D all of the interviews on Vlad. I hooked him up with all the dialogue, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Now all of a sudden when Keefy D got locked up, but no, I found out today from Choke No Joke when I was watching this video. The police came and got Keefy D on September 23rd. Reggie's testimony to the grand jury was August 23rd. How about that for 30 days? How about that for 30 days? I was like, wow, amazing, amazing. And like I said, a lot of the things that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. talked about in the grand jury testimony, man, he knew nothing about. He knew nothing about. I was like, oh wow. I'm like, why didn't he just tell him? I'm like, as Choke No Joke was reading it off, right? I was like, well, you see the question and you see the answer. As Choke No Joke was reading it, I'm like, well, why didn't Reggie just say, well, I really don't have, information. You might need to ask that individual in regards to whether he knew, this certain individual prior to this situation happening. You understand what I'm saying? Because if you ask me something about somebody else and whether they knew somebody before or prior or from another situation, I can't tell you whether that person knew them or not. Right? But you can ask that person and they probably can expound on that a little bit more than I could, because I wouldn't have that information. Shit. Not Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. He basically answered for the person. Nah, I don't think he knew him. Nah, I don't think he knew him. I'm like, what the fuck is this, man? I'm like, where they do this at, man? So like I said, if he did that in that situation and he wasn't, how could you be there to testify to something that you wasn't even there to witness? That's something you wouldn't know. But this is what we had. And so like I said, when Keefy D says that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is somehow the orchestrator or involved in the murder of Tupac Shakur, and Suge Knight says that the person that he saw, don't know how true it is, ladies and gentlemen, don't hold me to that, right? That the person that he saw that did the shooting worked for Death Row, don't know how true it is once again. Like I said, yeah, it's a lot to really digest with that. It's a lot to digest with that. Unless Keefy D knew something about the situation, that we don't know, you know what I mean? We don't know that, right? But like I said, this situation today with Keefy D involved in this assault thing, man, it doesn't work out well for him being on the phone talking about, I get dirty, dog handles his business, makes him appear to be the aggressor. You know what I mean? So if you take, and like I said, if you take that language, phone conversation, and then you go delve into everything that he said in regards to the Tupac and the confessions that he made into that, it just doesn't look good. And it doesn't seem, like I said, it was a one-day trial and he got convicted in one day for this assault. They looked at the video, they were like, you know what? And best believe that the jury knew who he was. Because if you live in Las Vegas, you're going to know who Keefy D is. So, yeah, like I said, who's that? Say Annan Lee. Yeah, Annan. Yeah. Suge basically called Reggie a Judas. And he called Reggie a Judas for two reasons. One was the reason that I gave you earlier about him calling the police, telling the police that Suge was having gang members as a security and they were carrying guns. That's one reason. And that's 3 days after Tupac died. See, Suge didn't know nothing about that until that paperwork came out, right? And then the other reason was Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. calling the police, telling the police when they were at the Soul Train Music Awards to let Suge's homeboys in. So Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. was kind of hating from the sideline the whole time. Yeah, he was working against Suge Knight the whole time, if you want to be perfectly honest. Because instead of confronting Suge Knight, say, Suge, look, man, I don't think it's a good idea. Let's go in here, handle business, man, and leave that to what that is, right? Reggie went and told the police, and he copped to it. And but his theory is, or his argument is that what? Oh, I saved Suge. Well, you ain't save him in Vegas. He got shot in Vegas. You ain't saved Tupac in Vegas. When they really needed you to save him, you know what I mean? Reggie was nowhere to be found. But knows everything about it, told his father 1 hour after the shooting, who did the shooting, who was involved with the shooting, and all of that. So the question is once again, how did you know about what happened? And like I said, he's been going out here and he has been believed to be the person that was in the know when he wasn't that individual. He was lying the whole time. And so, like I said, you know, when Suge called him a Judas, that's basically what he was calling him a Judas for. And now, you know, now he's called, I think Suge, somebody called him pork butt or something like that. And now he's mad about that. He's been running with that. But like I said, those Morgan and Morgan ads are no longer being played over on Bums First. You know what I mean? I don't think that they put up a video in the past couple of days because when you that's in that thing is going through the bankruptcy and it's chapter 7, they basically lose that. You're gonna lose that. So yeah. And so that's what it is, man. Yeah, yeah. Renee, yeah. Renee, like I said once again, the hate is real. As you look at the link that's below this video right here, how much Reggie hated Tupac. If you watch that video, you're gonna really get a real glimpse of who the real Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is. If he was being that petty with me to put out some kind of fake complaint, a fake privacy complaint to YouTube about me because I was telling people the truth about the bankruptcy, then imagine how he felt about Tupac when Tupac fired. This is all these are these like this simple things that you can follow along with, and when you see somebody do certain things from that perspective, you know, it's just as simple as that, man. As simple as that. And so, like I said, once again, this is where we are. Yeah. Like I said, that's been going on for Steve Smith. That's been going on for years. Him, you know, talking stuff about Suge, and kind of throwing it out there. But I don't think that Reggie the Rat can say anything about Suge without putting himself in jeopardy. You know, from that perspective, if he, you know, if he has or he says that he thinks that he has anything on Suge, I don't think he can say anything about Suge without putting himself in jeopardy. Yeah. Well, you know, not only that, like I said, Reggie had said that I'm sorry to kind of say this, but Reggie had said that Suge had a venereal disease and alleged that he gave a venereal disease to the singer Maya. Right? Now you talking about, listen to me, you talking about HIPAA laws, right? You talking about HIPAA laws and something being worthy of a lawsuit? That's being worthy of a lawsuit. That's defamation right there. You understand what I'm saying? See, this is the hypocrisy that I was telling you about. Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. did a video and said that Suge Knight gave Maya a venereal disease. I won't say the disease name, but a venereal disease. You can look it up, right? But for some odd reason, the hypocrite and the sneak thieving lying person inside of him didn't think that that was a violation of someone's privacy. That's the typical violation of someone's, when you allegedly putting something, information out to the public about someone's health, right? That violates HIPAA laws, if you know what that is. You know, like I said, but Reggie the Rat Wright Jr., once again, he really doesn't care. He just wants to win at all costs, no matter what side he's playing on. That's why he basically hijacked the Frank Alexander narrative, right? He hijacked Frank's story. Like I did the video the other day. I showed you how he hijacked Frank's story and said that he talked to Tupac Shakur twice on the night that Tupac was shot. He said one time Tupac called him, right, and told him how much he hated Frank. And he wished that Frank wasn't his bodyguard. That didn't happen. Another time, he said that Tupac called him again, trying to find out where Suge Knight was. Tupac would never call Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. The person who called Reggie and asked about where Suge was, it was Frank Alexander at Tupac's request, because Frank had already told that story a while ago. Reggie hijacked the story and put himself in the story and told the narrative that he wanted to say, and saying that Tupac called him. Well, we know that would be a lie based on the fact that what? Tupac didn't have a phone. Tupac damn sure not walking to the, listen to me, y'all. We talking about, they're inside of the MGM Grand. You got to understand this. They're inside of the MGM Grand. Tupac is not walking to no goddamn payphone inside the MGM Grand to call up Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. He just never, come on. You know how many people would bum rush Tupac? Like Tupac on the payphone over there. It's unheard of. But Frank said that he went to the payphone, and this was the second time during that day. The first time, he left a message for Reggie. Now, why is it that Frank didn't have a walkie-talkie, some kind of communication apparatus for being security that night? Was it part of the setup? You know what I mean? You know, these are some of the questions that are being asked, you know, deep down inside, that Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. simply can't answer. So once again, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, you know, you guys know what it is, man. The Keefe D situation, found guilty today, facing up to 2 to 12 years, getting sentenced on May the 27th. You know what I mean? Yeah, and like I said, you know, accountability is king. You know what I mean? Keeping your nose clean and staying out of trouble is the best solution to not giving people jurisdiction over your life, so they can give you any kind of time or put you in any kind of jail or cell or anything like that, you know, from that perspective. So, yeah. Yeah, all right. I don't know, man. Like I said, you know, I guess the estate, might have felt sorry for him, and didn't file a lawsuit. But like I said, Reggie the Rat Wright Jr. is criminally negligent in the death of Tupac Shakur. That's for damn sure. So, once again, like I said, I appreciate everybody coming through. Thank you for your time. Your boy DELRAY, straight gang.